welcome. Today, instead of a battle report or a game review, we are going to present how to make a piece of terrain. And specifically today, I'm going to talk to you about how to make hedges for medieval or fantasy war games, or bocage hedgerows for World War II Normandy terrain, etc. It can be used in a variety of settings, but mostly they obscure line of sight, or they give cover in most games. It's a relatively easy project. It's a project that is possible to do within the limits of most people's wallet or scope of their economy. And seeing as most of us are locked down at the moment due to Corona, I thought it would be good to do a video about a piece of terrain building. So here goes. So what does it take to make a hedge like this? Well, you need some materials. You need some basing material, and in this case I've used some MDF wood, or some compressed wood. I'm not sure what it's called in English actually, but it is wood fibre that has sort of been glued together or pressed together. It's not exactly plywood. MDF, maybe that's the English word. And you need to cut it out, but I'll get back to that. Also, I've used some polystyrene foam that came in something this family bought. The advantage of using that is that I've cut it up into strips of various sizes. We'll see more of that later. We need some glue. This is PVA glue, quite ordinary. Also, I've used some spray glue from the local retailer. Yeah. And of course, once you've done the basic model, you need to dress it up. There's a variety of choices for dressing up your models. I've used some static grass flock, and I've used some foliage, clump foliage, which is basically from a cushion, painted and torn up. You could do this yourself if you have an old cushion with a cold foam core, or you could just tear it in small pieces and spray paint it. And I had some shrubbery from Green Stuff World that I used to sort of add a bit to it. Yeah. So that's the basics of it. Now the first step is actually getting your hand on a basing material. As I said before, I used wood. It could be, this is a similar material to what is behind most picture frames today, actually. So if you have an old picture frame that's broken, you can use that. Sometimes I use cardboard, tough cardboard from packaging. I like to recycle and do that. In this case, this is leftovers from laser cutting, as you can see here. So anyway, I got my hand on some of that. And first step is cutting out a base. Now, if you look at this base here, what I've done is I've cut it at a 45-degree angle, approximately. I know it's not exact, but I've done that because that means that I could then add up another piece here. See, like this. You could put it up like this and get seamless angles. If you are surrounding a field with a hedge, or following a crossroad or something like that, or you could just put it in as an extension of the hedgerow. Now, next up, I'm going to cut. I'm a left-handed person, as you can see. I'm just going to cut. You could do this in a variety of ways. You could, like this, break off a bit. That'll give you a sort of an uneven top. You could use a hot wire to cut through to get sharp lines. You could use XPS foam as well. Now that has the advantage of not making these polystyrene sort of bubbles. You'll get very nice and neat shapes. So anyway, cut them up in a variety of thickness and size, and then we are ready to build up our hedge. Right, so once I've cut out some strips, I'll use the glue. I'll put it on to the board, and I'll then fix the lines to it like that, and let it dry. Maybe I'll build up 2 or 3 steps. Once that has been done, the next step is to paint it. Unlike when I paint miniatures, I use some rather cheap painting when I'm painting terrain. So it could be paint like this, and for this particular model what I did was mixed up some red with some green, and then add yellow and white till I had the right mix. Now what I went for was a dark brown like this. And the reason that I'm doing that is that some of this skeleton will be visible once I've completed the hedge. And so not having white polystyrene shine through the foliage will not sort of ruin the illusion. Now, I just painted this up, and then the next step is to lightly dry brush it. I'm not using expensive brushes for this part. I'm applying glue, and I'm doing the terrain painting and the dry brushing with the cheap hardware store brushes, because, well, you know, it works. Right, so here you see in progress with adding the clump foliage, the basic hedge. Now what I've done, as you can see, is I've built up the model of these polystyrene bricks. I've base coated it in a dark brown, and then lightly dry brushed by adding white to the color until I got it almost like a contrast paint. After dry brushing, which is basically just leaving your brush dried off so there's almost no paint left on it, and then lightly brush across the textures like this, and it'll leave the lighter shade at all the raised areas. So after that, I added some spray glue. You could use PVA or other adhesive glues. Most glues will work, to add the foliage. Right. And the foliage is something I've bought, but as I said earlier, you could make it yourself. And basically, it looks like this. It's this cold foam leftovers from a cushion or something like that. And basically what you do is you just put the glue on the model and then apply it like this. Press it and it'll be stuck there. And once you've covered most of it, it looks something like this. Now you could just leave it at this and it's ready for a gaming table. To make sure it doesn't drop off because it's just been spray glued on, I'd then give it some clear lacquer, some varnish or some thinned down PVA glue with more added water, and then just slightly spray it across it and then let it dry so it sort of keeps together or sticks on. Now what I've done here at the end is I took the model we saw before and then I added static grass. I add static grass by brushing up PVA glue unthinned and then sprinkle it down. Now I know most experienced modeliers will use an applicator that raises the static, or you could also, while the glue is wet, put a hoover on it and it'll raise the static grass so it looks more like grass. For this video and for this particular terrain, I didn't do that. So once the basing is done, and note that I've left out pieces where you could see the brown terrain as earth through, it's time to add details. I've small static grass lumps like this, usually in another color like darker green or lighter green, I had this shrubbery from Greenstuff World, or you could make it yourself from rubberized horsehair that you buy in a hobby store, and then glue some flock onto. I was lucky to have something left in one of my many boxes. So the biggest issue here is drying. Right, so here you have the different steps from once it's base coated till it's finished. Now you might notice that it's not just wood here. I've actually PVA glued some sand or gravel on. You could use flocking, but I've just picked up some gravel from the garden really. So you get those stones and sand in different sizes, which makes art really great for when you dry brush the model. Right, so you start there, dry brushed, then applied with the flock. Once that's completed, you could leave it and finish it, or you could add details before you finish it up with a layer of varnish or PVA thin down glue. Right, I think that was basically it for today. And I'll leave some pictures here at the end, and as we do the outro, that shows you some miniatures up alongside it. It gives you a perspective of the height. You could also, as you can see with this one, you could vary the height by building different heights in the base skeleton, and that will give you different looks. You could also add twigs and paint them up as fallen trees. You could add model trees from model railroads to sort of give it a different look. You could also glue on some stones, leave some part of the stone bed and make a stone wall underneath the brush. A lot of potential here for hours and hours of fun. And it's a piece of terrain that's usable in almost any fantasy and modern day scenario. Right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a short but hopefully sweet video from my living room to all of you out there. Take care, be safe in this time, and hopefully we'll all meet again across gaming tables all over the world once this is over. I might do another terrain video. Comment, like, please subscribe. This is all done on a volunteer basis, so I'm really dependent upon you guys out there. Thank you for watching. See you soon again.